So let's begin the video today on discussing the sociopath and the diagnostic criteria of a sociopath so you can better know and understand if you have one of these particular types of people in your life right now. Is deceitfulness. It's indicated by repeated lying, the use of aliases, right? And conning others for personal profit or personal pleasure. That's a big one. That's a key one. The third is impulsivity and a failure to actually plan ahead. Fourth is the irritability and aggressiveness is indicated by repeated physical fights or physical or emotional assaults. Next is reckless disregard for the safety of themselves as well as the safety of others. Okay. Next is the lack of remorse, as indicated by being indifferent or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another person. And this is interesting because we remember that in the criterion, the individual is at least 18 years or older, and there has to be no evidence of onset of these criterion prior to 15 years of age. And so when you start looking at this criterion and you start thinking about this criterion, it's important to realize that it can't just be one or two off. It really needs to follow this criterion to understand if somebody does and is suffering with antisocial personality disorder, aka sociopathic behavior. The criterion is important to understand, okay? But now let's really focus on their behavior. Many people call it the 90% rule. And a really easy way to really spot a sociopath outside of understanding the criterion is to stay focused on their behavior and not the words that they say. And why I say this is that oftentimes with a sociopath, they can have a tendency of making us feel really good because they say all the right things, right? Until we've known them for quite some times. And then they can go back and forth. They can also be very mean. But when we pay attention to their behavior instead of what they say, it really helps us to feel and to understand what we're dealing with. Another interesting point about dealing with a sociopath is to pay really close attention to extreme behavior, okay? Often a sociopath, 90% of the time, is going to do things in an extreme way. And when you're around them for a long period of time, you begin to forget that this is extreme behavior. And so a good thing and a good rule of thumb is to honestly ask yourself, would I ever do that? So the extreme behavior that just happened, asking yourself, stepping back from the situation and saying, is that something that I would ever do? Okay? Because what I've found is that extreme behavior is extremely common for sociopaths. But the thing is that they quickly cover it up, right? With comments or excuses. You know, maybe they might do something really extreme, and in order to cover it up, they talk about all the stress they're under, right? Or this person pushed them into this, or pushed them over the edge, or pushed them over the edge of reason, or whatever they use to cover up doing something extreme that you and I would never ever do. And I find it interesting because when you're around them long enough and you're not paying attention to the behavior, you're just listening to what they say, you can get really lost in the shuffle. And oftentimes what happens is you begin to feel like off center. You begin to feel as though there's something wrong with you because things aren't adding up. Okay? Another thing about sociopaths is it doesn't really matter about the behavior, right? There's always an excuse. And I mean, I hate to use the words always and never, but there's almost always an excuse. Responsibility is really not part of a sociopath's mode of operandi, right? They're usually the ones that are always blameless. And if you're waiting for an apology from a sociopath, you might as well wait for the rest of your life, okay? You might as well just stand in line and wait because it's never going to come. And I'm talking about a truthful apology. Words are words.